At 70, Tully Blanchard finally breaks silence on the dark allegations that have haunted his legendary career for decades. The master of wrestling psychology, a founding member of the Four Horsemen and the Brainbusters, multiple Hall of Fame inductee. But behind the accolades lies a shadow that wrestling fans still whisper about today. Stories of arrogance, addiction, and ego that destroyed one of the sport's sharpest minds at the height of his power. How did a second-generation star with everything going for him lose it all in a single moment? And why, even after finding redemption, do questions about his character still linger? This is the untold story of Tully Blanchard's rise, fall, and the controversies that defined his legacy. Tully Arthur Blanchard was born into wrestling royalty on January 22, 1954, in Calgary, Canada. His father, Joe Blanchard, was both a promoter and former professional wrestler, giving Tully a direct pipeline into the business from childhood. After playing college football as a quarterback at West Texas State University, Blanchard was trained by his father and professional wrestler, Jose Lothario. He made his debut in 1975 in his father's Southwest Championship wrestling promotion, but even in those early days, the seeds of his downfall were already planted. Blanchard didn't just wrestle in Southwest Championship wrestling. He held multiple backstage production and creative positions. This early taste of power and control would shape his personality for decades to come. He quickly found success, winning the Southwest Television Championship and Southwest Heavyweight Championship multiple times. More importantly, he learned to transition from a clean-cut babyface teaming with his father to a ruthless heel when he formed the dynamic duo with Gino Hernandez. This period was crucial. Blanchard discovered he had a natural gift for playing the villain. But unlike other wrestlers who could turn off their heel persona backstage, Blanchard began living the character. The arrogance wasn't just an act, it was becoming who he really was. In 1984, seeking bigger opportunities, Blanchard left his father's promotion to join Jim Crockett Promotions. It was a decision that would make him famous and ultimately destroy his career. Blanchard's arrival in JCP immediately positioned him as a top-tier antagonist. He quickly entered high-profile feuds with Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA. His rivalry with Magnum TA was particularly brutal, culminating in an I Quit match inside a steel cage at Starrcade 1985 that remains one of the most violent and intense matches of its era. These feuds established Blanchard as a legitimate main event heel, but it was what happened next that would define wrestling history and seal his fate. In 1985, an impromptu backstage interview led to the spontaneous formation of the Four Horsemen. Alongside Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Ole Anderson, with J.J. Dillon as their manager, the group's philosophy was radical. They didn't just play rich, arrogant characters on television. They lived the gimmick outside the ring. They traveled in limos and jets. They wore expensive suits and flashed money. They acted entitled and superior because, in their minds, they were. This seamless integration of reality and performance meant Blanchard's on-screen arrogance wasn't theatrical. It was an amplified version of his actual personality. As a core member, Blanchard held the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship and later the NWA World Tag Team Championship with Arn Anderson. But the success was feeding something darker. The lifestyle of excess wasn't just a character choice, it was becoming an addiction. In September 1988, Blanchard and Arn Anderson left JCP and formed the Brainbusters in the World Wrestling Federation under the management of Bobby the Brain Heenan. They brought their grounded, technically focused style to a company known for colorful, theatrical characters. The contrast was striking. While the WWF featured cartoon-like personas, the Brainbusters relied on ruthless psychology and in-ring prowess. The fact that the WWF allowed them to keep their names and personas with minimal changes spoke to how highly their talent was regarded. Their brief run was profoundly impactful. On July 18, 1989, they defeated Demolition in a 2 out of 3 falls match to capture the WWF Tag Team Championship, ending Demolition's then-record 478-day title reign. They also had notable matches against the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam 1989. But behind the scenes, Blanchard's reputation was becoming toxic. Peers described him as difficult and cocky. His on-screen arrogance was spilling into the locker room. He wasn't just playing a character anymore. He had become the character. By late 1989, the Brainbusters were feeling underappreciated by the WWF. They had given their notice and were scheduled to leave after Survivor Series. Waiting for them was a lucrative, pre-negotiated deal with World Championship Wrestling worth reportedly $750,000. The reunion of the Brainbusters in WCW and their likely reintegration into the Four Horsemen would have been a seismic event in wrestling. Everything was set up perfectly. Then came November 2nd, 1989. the day that changed everything. On November 2nd, 1989, Tully Blanchard failed a mandatory WWE drug test for cocaine. The WWF immediately fired him. The news quickly reached WCW management, specifically Jim Herd, who rescinded their contract offer. In a single moment, Blanchard was blackballed from the two biggest wrestling promotions in the United States. His full-time top-tier career was over. But the damage spread beyond just Blanchard. His tag team partner Arn Anderson saw his own WCW deal altered to a lower-paying contract. The reunion of the Brainbusters was permanently off the table. The dream of a reunited original Four Horsemen was shattered, leading WCW to reform the group with Sting in Blanchard's place. The failed drug test wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a professional calamity that created one of the greatest what-if moments in wrestling history, directly impacting the strategic direction of two competing companies. Yet the drug test alone wasn't the only reason for the industry's rejection. Blanchard's reputation for being difficult had already put him on thin ice. The failed test simply provided the final justification for a business that had grown weary of his attitude and internal politics. This pattern continued even after his initial blacklisting. At WCW's Slamboree 1994, Blanchard was brought in for a one-off match against Terry Funk. According to Blanchard's own account, when he arrived, agents told him he was booked to lose to Funk. Unaware of this decision beforehand, Blanchard refused to do the job, leading to a double disqualification finish. Years after his initial blacklisting, he was still unwilling to follow prescribed roles. This incident further solidified his negative reputation as someone who put his ego above the business. The lifestyle of drugs, sex, and rock and roll that Blanchard admits to living was a direct extension of the Four Horsemen gimmick. His cocaine dependence was a profound personal struggle that mirrored his on-screen persona of excess and self-indulgence. Blanchard recalled sitting in dressing rooms after matches with only one thought: getting drunk or high. He admitted the only happiness he had was when he was using substances, though he clarified it wasn't true happiness, just a fleeting escape from pain. The professional blacklisting took a devastating toll on his personal life. He went through marriages and divorces, with the demands of his destructive lifestyle undoubtedly contributing to the breakdown of his relationships. The loss of his career left him jobless, deeply in debt, and by his own account, considering suicide. Blanchard's claimed turning point came at his lowest moment. In desperation and unable to sleep, he stated the words, "Jesus Christ, take over my life," came out of his mouth. He called this a divine intervention, noting he hadn't been to church since childhood. This conversion led him to prison ministry across the United States and abroad. He began using his personal story as a tool to connect with inmates, serving as a platform speaker for organizations like Bill Glass Ministries. But even his redemption story has critics. Some question whether his ministry genuinely addresses past behavior or simply provides another platform for attention. In the late 2010s, Blanchard experienced a limited return to wrestling with All Elite Wrestling as a manager, initially guiding FTR and later joining the Pinnacle stable. However, this comeback highlighted a disconnect with the modern wrestling generation. Blanchard publicly stated that younger wrestlers rarely asked for his advice. When offered a potential last match with Ricky Steamboat, he declined, stating he didn't want to embarrass himself. His AEW run ended quietly and somewhat unceremoniously, with Blanchard confirming his departure was a little more complex than a simple contract expiration. Perhaps most telling is Blanchard's relationship with his daughter, Tessa Blanchard. A third-generation professional wrestler, Tessa's career has been defined by its own controversies, leading to her own blacklisted reputation in the industry. The two experienced a well-documented period of estrangement, with Tully initially expressing disapproval of her wrestling involvement. Their recent public reconciliation in late 2024 and early 2025, including Tessa's appearance at TNA Wrestling with Tully shown on camera, symbolizes a reunion between two talents whose careers were derailed by personal conduct issues. The parallel between father and daughter is stark. Both possessed prodigious talent. Both saw their professional opportunities curtailed by reputation and personal controversies. The apple, as they say, doesn't fall far from the tree. At 70, Tully Blanchard has finally begun speaking more openly about his past. His conversion to Christianity and prison ministry work represent genuine attempts at redemption. His Hall of Fame inductions acknowledge his undeniable contributions to professional wrestling. But for many wrestling fans and industry insiders, the damage is permanent. The failed drug test, the ego-driven decisions, the difficult reputation, and the pattern of putting personal interests above professional responsibilities created a legacy that redemption cannot fully erase. Blanchard was undeniably brilliant, a master of wrestling psychology who helped create two of the sport's most legendary factions. His technical skills and heel persona were influential and groundbreaking. Yet his story remains a cautionary tale about how personal failings can destroy professional greatness, about how living a gimmick can become living a nightmare, about how arrogance and addiction can cost everything, including relationships with the next generation. The allegations and controversies that surrounded Tully Blanchard's career weren't just rumors or jealous gossip. They were the inevitable result of a man who blurred the lines between performance and reality until he couldn't tell the difference. At 70, he's finally talking. But for many, it's decades too late.